The AI juggernaut just rolls along. And things are getting a little bit weird. A research lab finds a new and efficient material to use in chip production that promises to be as energy efficient and smart as the human brain. The material in question is, well, chunks of a human brain. These computer chips are a fusion of human neurons, electronic circuits, and AI. They're rapidly attracting funding, including military funding. And I think this brings us to an important question that we have to answer as a society. And that is, can this thing play Doom? I mean, what good is all this technology if it can't play Doom? After that, we're going to cover all the other big things that are happening in the AI space. First, a giant enters the AI arena, and that is Amazon. I somewhat dismissed Amazon as a major player in the AI space, but I see that that was a mistake. Amazon is about to land into AI like a 800-pound sumo wrestler. In other news, OpenAI publishes a tutorial that contains a few lines of code with massive implications. Let's dive in. So really quick, let's talk about some of the terminology that we need to know to understand what's happening here. If you have a good grasp about how the neurons in our brain are able to predict the future, just go ahead and skip to the next chapter. So the human brain is very complex and it has a lot of moving parts, which kind of came as a shock to me. I realized there are more moving parts, literally moving parts in it than I thought. But at the core of the brain, you have neurons and synapses. Synapse, however you want to pronounce it. So think of neurons as little ping pong balls and as strings that connect those balls. Neural net is just a bunch of these strung together. And these things are basically little prediction machines. They learn to predict the future to the best of their ability through a process called synaptic plasticity. The process involves the strengthening or weakening of the synapses, aka the strings that connect our neurons, based on their activity. If a connection leads to a positive outcome, it gets stronger and therefore more likely to fire in the future. You may have heard the phrase, neurons that fire together, wire together. So over time, some of those connections get stronger, some get weaker. So for example, if you notice a certain smell right before you get tasty food, the neurons in your brain that connect that smell to that food and smells to food in general, they're going to get stronger, and the owner of the brain is going to be able to know that certain smells will lead to certain foods. Their predictive abilities about smells and foods will get stronger. By the way, these neural nets, these connections of neurons, that's the exact same idea that we've used to create AI. The ChatGPTs and all this stuff rolling out of DeepMind that's beating people at chess, at Go, the thing that's predicting the protein folding, etc. Those are based on neural nets, and they are remarkably similar to the neural nets in our brains. Each concept within the neural nets in our brains has a relative concept in neural nets in machine learning. Neurons and neurons are the same thing in both. The synapses are kind of like the weight in machine learning. Basically, how strong the connections between synapses are weighted, how strong they are, and how often they're going to fire. And those weights are adjusted in neural networks with back propagation and gradient descent, aka learning. So with that, let's read the article about this new biocomputer chip. So here's what it looks like. Actually, this is just Midjourney generated. So last year, Monash University scientists created the DishBrain, a semi-biological computer chip with some 800,000 human and mouse brain cells, lab-grown into its electrodes. Demonstrating something like sentience, it learned to play Pong within 5 minutes. So the microelectrode array, you can probably think of it as computer chips, basically, that's able to guide current where it needs to be able to interact with the brain cells. That was able to both read the activity in the brain cells and also stimulating them with electrical signals. So the research team set up a version of Pong where the brain cells were fed a moving electrical stimulus to represent which side of the screen the ball was on and how far away from the paddle it was. They allowed the brain cells to act on paddle, moving it left and right. Then they set up a very basic reward system using the fact that small clusters of brain cells tend to try to minimize unpredictability in their environment. Then they set up a very basic reward function, or rather reward system, using the fact that small clusters of the brain cells tend to try to minimize unpredictability in their environment. This is kind of what we talked about earlier. They want to be right, they get strengthened when they are right, and when they are right, they get stronger, etc. Another way of saying that is they're minimizing unpredictability. So the neural connections that are not able to predict how to play this game correctly, they slowly atrophy, they get smaller. The ones that can predict it correctly grow stronger. So if the paddle hit the ball, the cells would receive a nice, predictable stimulus. But if it missed, the cells would get 4 seconds of totally unpredictable stimulation. In a different experiment, I saw this described as classical music for the positive and just static for the negative, that noise that you hear on TV. Because of how unpredictable it is, it's not pleasing to our brains. So that kind of works as punishment. By the way, if you've ever seen somebody or heard somebody talking about AI on a podcast and they're describing it as being, upset or trapped or maybe having some feelings, recently one of the godfathers of AI came out and talking about how AI has the potential to have feelings. Some of the things they sometimes reference is kind of like what is said here. Like when we give it nice, predictable stimulus, is that equivalent to pleasure? And is unpredictable stimulation, is that pain? If you've ever seen those Black Mirror episodes, you know what happens when you negatively stimulate something for like 1,000 years and then let it loose. Now, I don't necessarily believe that that's the case. I don't think that this is the same as pain or pleasure. Those are different. Those are completely different things that happen in the body. But for people that are talking about AI safety and stuff like that, it's a good thing that somebody's thinking about it. It was the first time lab-grown brain cells have been used this way, being given not only a way to sense the world, but to act on it. And the results were impressive. So this is a scanning electron microscope image of DishBrain neurons growing on an array of electrodes. So this is a real image from Cortical Labs. So for those that are not able to see this image, so it basically looks like a lot of snot, some balled up and some sort of like stretched out. And so the balled up pieces are the cluster of neurons. And so the little stretchy things that stretch between the clusters, I'm guessing that's the dendrites. That's the little things that they use to stretch out and connect to each other. And so here they're saying that it's attracting some funding. And so it's saying that this research, undertaken in partnership with Melbourne startup Cortical Labs, has now attracted a $407,000 grant from Australia's National Intelligence and Security Discovery Research Grants, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is a military-related program. These programmable chips, fusing biological computing with artificial intelligence, in future may eventually surpass the performance of existing purely silicon-based hardware, says project lead Associate Professor Adil Razi. The outcomes of such research would have significant implications across multiple fields such as, but not limited to, planning, robotics, advanced automation, brain-machine interfaces, and drug discovery, giving Australia a significant strategic advantage. You have to say this to get military funding. Those are the key words, significant strategic advantage. My understanding is one of the big reasons for doing this, one of the big advantages is that the brain cells are much more like energy efficient, and it's obviously able to learn how to play Pong within 5 minutes, which is nice. But the question still remains, can it play Doom? Well, the guys at the Thought Emporium decided to find out. They laid out their experiments, ordered their needed circuits, they ordered the frozen neurons that they needed, and built this thing, actually, neural multi-electric array. And they explained how they were going to train this thing to play Doom. If you don't know what Doom is, this is Doom, the original game from 1990, whatever, 93, I think. Basically, they talked about the same way of giving it positive and negative stimulus. Here they talked about specifically, I believe they said. So you can see here, so there's good and bad. So as an example, as you're turning to look at the monster or whatever, if you're moving away from it, it's like hot and cold. You're getting warmer, you're getting colder, etc. Or in this case, they're showing if it's on your left or on your right. And they're sending the signals to this thing, and also they're able to read some of the signals from there. So this is basically replicating what that article talked about. I think they're pretty much doing probably something very similar. So static for negative punishment and classical music for positive reinforcement. Well, the pink stuff you see there, that's the neurons. That's the frozen neurons that they've ordered and that are being grown. That's them receiving the package. Here's those neurons under the microscope as soon as they're getting pulled out. And we're going to see some growth of those where they're going to spread out, and we're going to see the dendrites that are starting to connect the little clusters. I did not know this, but here's a sped up footage of neurons crawling around to get into position wherever they need to be. I had to go and verify that, but this is what it looks like. Apparently, these are little neurons crawling around to get into the position where they need to be, which is, I had no idea that this is how it worked, and I'm kind of blown away by this. So some spoilers up ahead. So if you don't want to know how this experiment ended, skip ahead about 30 seconds. But this is very exciting. They're continuing this research and you can fund them. They have a little Patreon where you can go and donate some money. I think I'm going to donate some money because I'm very curious to see where this goes. This is absolutely fascinating. The fact that they can replicate this, I mean, it's not like a home environment. They seem to be like they have some lab and they have a lot of tech skills. They're able to build their own circuit boards and attach some hardware to it and stuff like that. But the fact that this is like a small team of people that are able to conduct these experiments is incredibly motivating and just very kind of life affirming. So they were able to grow these neurons and have them connect outside of that experiment that they're running with the circuit board, with the array. And it worked very well. In fact, some of them almost got too dense to be usable. So they're able to have these things survive and thrive, etc. But it sounds like they were not able to have them survive and thrive in the experimental little thing that they set up. I think they suffocated them all. Also, there was not enough light, not too clear, but basically they just killed millions of these. Very sad. But now they found one way that this doesn't work. And like Thomas Edison said, I did not fail. I just found 2,000 ways how to not make a light bulb. I only needed to find one that works. Same thing here. We just need to find one way to make these lab-grown neurons attached to a circuit board be able to play Doom. Why, you might ask? Well, here's why.
You can make little veins form to keep the core of the organoid oxygenated. With a few electrodes, we'd have the ultimate micro-brain processor. And since we can make them starting from skin cells, there's nothing to say that we couldn't take a skin sample from, say, everybody at the lab and grow our own little mini-brains. Then we could have an office Quake tournament played by our own lab-grown brain dishes and see whose cells learn better.
And if growing competitive Quake-playing AI agents from your skin cells is not science, then I don't know what is. Next up, we have creating an automated meeting minutes generator with Whisper and GPT-4. So Whisper is OpenAI's speech recognition system. So it takes an audio file and it converts it to text. So this is, by the way, this is by OpenAI. It's a little tutorial they're doing. There's like, hey, here's how you can do this, right? If you don't code, just stick with me here because I think it's going to be a lot easier than you might think it is. The application transcribes audio from a meeting, provides a summary of the discussion, extracts key points and action items, and performs a sentiment analysis. So this tutorial assumes a basic understanding of Python and an OpenAI API key. So the fact that they give you all the code, you don't even really need to know how to code in Python. You just need to kind of know where to type it in or whatever, which is pretty simple. So first we need some libraries and some packages. So you run this to install that. And then this is the first part of the code. So you import OpenAI, basically all the libraries and stuff you need to run it. And then this creates this function called transcribe audio. Then you put the whatever audio file path, the audio file that you have that has to go in there. And then here we're using Whisper 1. That's their model that they're using to transcribe that audio file. And then it spits out the text, the transcription of the audio. And then, so GPT-4 is OpenAI's state-of-the-art large language model, which we'll use to generate a summary, extract key points, action items, and perform sentiment analysis. And so here they're creating another function that's going to do an abstract summary, key points, action items, sentiment. So it's going to connect to OpenAI API, and then it's going to spit out the summary and the key points, etc. It takes the transcription and summarizes it into a concise, abstract paragraph with the aim to retain the main important points without the fluff, etc. Key points extraction. So this is the key points, and OpenAI does mention here that it's really important to provide context to GPT-4. Basically, you want to say something like, we are a company that sells race cars to consumers. We do XYZ. So you're explaining to it who you are so that it understands what the key points are. Then action item extraction. This is interesting because, so let's say during the meeting you say, okay, Bob, do ABC, and then Lisa, do XYZ. This is going to extract the action items. And then the next thing you can do is actually have the ability to automatically create tasks in your task management software and assign it to the relevant person. So this could automatically, from just scanning the meeting minutes, from creating the meeting minutes, figuring out what needs to be done, and then just stick that into whomever's calendar so that they know that they have to complete it. Calendar or to-do list or whatever. And here they give the code for that. Then we have sentiment analysis. Interestingly, here they also say that it might be worthwhile to try out using GPT 3.5 Turbo instead of GPT-4 or alongside of it, or trying to see what works better. And you do see this a lot in various studies that are performed. Like there's tons of tasks where you just need some text and it doesn't have to be perfect. And GPT 3.5 Turbo works great for that. So GPT-4, you really want to be doing it for stuff that It's like, at work, if you have coworkers, some of them are just whatever, and a few of them like really smart and really on top of it, right? There's most tasks you can give it to whomever, but like the really key items, you give it to that smart person. That's GPT-4. GPT 3.5 Turbo, it's faster, it produces results much faster, and it's much cheaper to produce because you're paying per token or whatever through the API. So it is going to be much cheaper to use GPT 3.5 Turbo, just as long as it doesn't have to think too hard. And then we're going to export these meeting minutes, and it gives you the code for that. And just it saves it. It says if you want to do it in Microsoft Word, this is how you do it in Microsoft Word. And then finally, this is just all of it together in one thing where you're calling all the functions and then saving the thing. What strikes me here is how easy and simple this is to set up. So if you haven't coded before, if you have no idea what Python is or what APIs are for, you can learn just enough to get this up and running within a week. That's if you go at the slowest pace possible. If you're super motivated, like if let's say your family went missing and setting this up was the only way to save them, like you'd have this done in 24 hours with no tech knowledge. If you could use YouTube to watch some tutorials, if you can use ChatGPT to maybe have it explain some of the code to you or just ask questions about it. It's important to understand that this isn't rocket scientist level. This isn't even software developer level. This is anybody that's willing to spend a few hours feeling a little bit foolish while trying to learn something new. If you're able to get through that discomfort of trying to learn something new, then you could be using this within a day or two. And this is big. Like, just think about what you can do with something like this, where you're extracting all this information from audio. The applications here are massive. Just think about any corporation that has tons of meetings. Every corporation has tons of meetings. Many times the project lead or whomever, maybe the assistant, will do this and extract the key items and do this. Everybody's taking their little notes. Things like this completely automate that. Not only that, but it's really smart. It's smarter than most other things that we've had before, where it's able to really pull out all the key details. And then something like this can also plug it into your own AI agent that you might have. So this gives you the action items, and then your AI assistant or whatever can then, before you even get out of the meeting, start processing some of those items and maybe even have some of them completed. I mean, in my previous videos, I've mentioned the fact that we have all the Lego pieces to build autonomous AI agents. I mean, this is like one of those Lego pieces. Like basically you need a little bit of Python and just the OpenAI key, and it does so much. So there's that, something to play around with. Next on a list of AI news, we're talking about Amazon entering the AI world, the AI competition, the AI arena. Of course, that's Jeffrey Bezos, the founder. He's not running it anymore. He's got a lot of help. He's got a new CEO. Now, at first, Amazon was not on my radar as an AI company. When OpenAI came out with ChatGPT and it like exploded overnight, I was like, okay, they seem to be like they're the leader in the space. Later, I found out that Microsoft and Bill Gates apparently was visiting OpenAI headquarters long before anybody even knew about OpenAI. So he was working out the deal where he got, 50% of OpenAI's revenue. Microsoft loaned them money to use for their cloud compute costs on Azure. And in exchange, OpenAI would have to give them 50% of their profits until they paid back the however many billions they were given. So it was a killer deal for Microsoft because not only from just a cash perspective, just a profitability perspective, but also, I mean, they got OpenAI running on Azure. Not only that, but they also got a insider view into OpenAI. I mean, that Sparks of AGI research thing that came out, that was Microsoft. That was a lot of Microsoft researchers talking about GPT-4 and just the timing of it. Obviously, they had it long before the public had it. So they were looking at that stuff long before other people had access to it. Then I was looking for Google to catch up, and it seemed to be struggling. DeepMind is doing its own thing. I mean, it's kicking butt, but it doesn't seem to be quite in the same kind of sort of arena as all the chatbots and stuff like that. Although recently it just came out that their new robots is actually, they're using LLM models as sort of the brain of the robots. So instead of building some unique AI model, they're using Palm, which is Google's LLM. But those were like the big players. There were whispers about Apple having, AI chips. Of course, Tesla, but Tesla, it's harder to get a view into what they're doing. Supposedly, they have very advanced AI. Obviously, they have tons of stuff invested in full self-driving. They're working on that robot. But it's hard to get a glimpse into exactly what they're doing. NVIDIA, obviously a huge player, putting out tons of research papers, obviously doing incredible in terms of hardware, but also a lot of like the software applications as well. They're doing a lot of AI as a service. That's where they're kind of moving in that direction. So those seem to be like the big players. But Amazon wasn't kind of really on the radar. But it's beginning to look like they might have been kind of like a sleeping giant, just waiting until they were ready to strike. So Amazon announces the launch and preview of agents for Bedrock. Bedrock being Amazon's platform that provides a way to build generative AI-powered apps via pre-trained models from startups as well as Amazon itself. Agents allow customers to create conversational agents to deliver personalized, up-to-date answers based on their proprietary data and execute actions. And this is where it gets interesting. So in a briefing, Swami Siva Subramanian, the VP of Machine Learning at AWS, told TechCrunch that a company could use agents to create a customer service chatbot that can process orders, tapping their internal information, including customer profiles and their return policy to customize each order. So, and to figure out which actions to take, what information to use, and in which sequence to perform actions, Bedrock agents have to be shown how to reason through prompts that include definitions and instructions. These prompts are generated automatically in the backend through a series of configuration steps, one of which involves telling the agent what task it's supposed to perform and role it's supposed to assume. Like you're an agent designed to help with the processing insurance claims and managing pending paperwork. And so they got quite a few different AI models already kind of under their umbrella. It's not their own. They have their own Amazon version of it, but they also have others like Anthropic's Claude 2, Stable Diffusion XL 1.0, and they're both available in Bedrock as of today. And so are two foundational models from NVIDIA-backed Cohere, specifically Command Text Generation and Cohere Embed. But the point here is that Amazon is trying to be the AI model provider. So think about how huge AWS is, right? They build their cloud service and so many companies are using it. I mean, take a look at these companies that are using AWS. Amazon, obviously. Facebook, BMW, ESPN, Unilever. Unilever is massive. A lot of people don't know it because it's tons of other smaller companies. Walt Disney, so all the streaming services, all that's AWS. Twitch, huge streaming. Netflix is on there somewhere. Pfizer, General Electric, Airbnb, Capital One Bank, Comcast. Netflix uses AWS for nearly all its computing and storage needs. And so they're already kind of embedded with them. And now here comes AI, and all these companies are going to need AI. My first thought when ChatGPT came out and I started understanding what it's capable of, I've been in e-commerce since 2011. I've worked with other companies to help them build their e-commerce presence, and I've built my own, and I was very successful with it. I've been doing it for a long time. And when I realized that this could automate customer service completely, that kind of blew my mind. It's such a sore point for a lot of companies. Not only is it expensive, it's sometimes hard to audit a lot of it just because of how much stuff there is. You know, if you have customer agents, training them up is kind of a pain in the butt. And it is very important because bad customers leave reviews, they start chargebacks, they do all sorts of horrible stuff. Some of them threaten your life. I swear to you that has happened more than I care to admit. And not because you did anything wrong. It's, the package got lost. We had somebody that lived in Florida when it was like insanely hot over there, and the product that we shipped to them melted, got messed up because of just how insanely hot and humid it was over there. So this Florida man, as I think about it, it was a man from Florida. He basically threatened to, I'm not going to even say it because YouTube is going to demonetize this video, but customer service is a pain in the butt. Let's say that. And immediately I saw that this is where a lot of the stuff is going to be going, where a lot of money is going to be made, because it's a huge amount of money that the e-commerce companies can save. Now, at the time, a lot of people, and even this is TechCrunch, they tend to say this along with a lot of other media. They say, oh, but do you really want to trust AI to answer your customer service emails? AI is going to say some horrible stuff. They're going to be offensive, blah, blah, blah. They don't have any idea what they're talking about, because you don't need AI to necessarily generate the response emails. Really, what you would be using it for, you need to understand what the other person's saying, right? You need to shuffle it into different categories. What does this person want? They want to get an update on their package. Where's their package? Send them the tracking info. This person wants a refund. Tell them how to get a refund. This person wants to change their, monthly shipment rate, whatever. Here's how they can do that. the responses can be pre-written. You don't need to write a special unique poem every time you respond to a customer. In fact, most people use, if you're using Gmail, use something like those canned responses and you just have like 10 of them. The whole point is that something like this can sort very effectively and follow up with questions, can ask questions if needed, etc. It doesn't need to get too creative. The key here is has a certain intelligence that it's able to figure out what goes where and make certain decisions. All the other technology we've had for a long time. So I was curious who was going to be the first to provide this service. I thought Shopify might. Shopify has been moving in that direction. Shopify is a big e-commerce software provider. But here it pretty much says that this is, they pretty much spell it out. AWS, Amazon, they're going to create a customer service chatbot that can process orders. They can use their internal information, customer profiles, return policy. Amazon is going to run everyone's customer service. Why? Because a lot of how well the model performs is based on the data that you give it. So having a lot of data in a particular field is very important for building a great model. For example, Tesla has some insane amount of miles driven by their Teslas. They have tons of data and everything. So they're going to be ahead of the competition that's trying to catch up. And then Ford tries to catch up. Well, Ford's starting at zero. Tesla has more data, so they're able to build the model, start improving, start that compounding process. What company has the biggest amount of data on customer service and answering customer service complaints and all the various ways in which customers can say things? It's actually a lot harder than you can imagine because, even for something like getting a refund, there's like a million ways you can say that. Not everybody's going to say refund. People say money back, cash back, return, merchandise authorization. They might even say anything like, hey, this is a scam, fix it. They might not even say any keyword that a regular computer, like a logic-based software, is able to pick up on to determine where that email needs to go. It sounds like this whole time Amazon was developing some sort of a customer service chatbot. Maybe it was already using it for a while. I don't even know if you can call those guys. I think you can call them, but they really try to prevent that. They're trying to get you to solve the problem through chat or email. And so it's likely that whether they have this model live now, which very likely they do, or they're going to launch it soon, but they're going to have more data and more examples of how these situations are handled than anyone else on the planet by massive amounts, orders of magnitude more. You're going to have this massive domino effect of all these big companies, all of them paying, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars for their customer support. They're going to very quickly, especially if they're already integrated with AWS, they're very quickly going to jump on board and just replace whatever customer support staff they have with one chatbot that answers everyone's questions. That's going to save them huge amounts of money. And then everybody else is going to have to do it just to be competitive, right? If you're competing with somebody that has, close to zero customer service cost and you're spending hundreds of thousands a month or a year, whatever, they're going to win. So you have to follow suit. That's just one part of what Amazon is trying to do because they're launching all this other stuff, pretty much everything except OpenAI and Google. All the other models are going to be on here or as many as they can launch. So if you're building some app or if you're building anything that involves these LLMs, these AI models, you don't want to be necessarily setting up your own service and dealing with that. You can just plug into AWS because it's easier. They take care of everything. They take care of the scaling. You can have 5 customers or 5 million. It doesn't matter because it just scales up and down. It's securities provided, like Amazon's watching your back, making sure you don't get hacked. And they already have a lot of the infrastructure. They already have a lot of the chips and the data centers, etc. One other thing that's interesting is they are talking about the fact that it sounds like they're going to be developing their own chips, as in like NVIDIA has the market corner right now. All the GPUs are produced by NVIDIA. They're the number one player in that space. It sounds like Amazon is developing something to compete with that. Now, it's hard to get any clear details. They're very, very cagey about it. But they are saying, yes, we're going to have some sort of hardware, our own hardware. And they're saying that it's going to be better than NVIDIA's GPUs for certain use cases. So what that means, I don't know, but watch Amazon. I think it's a sleeping giant. It just got up and it's going to start swinging. And a last quick bonus piece of news. So this is from Andreessen Horowitz. They're big investors in the tech space. They're like the grand royalty of the internet, of the Silicon Valley. Sounds like they're moving into the AI direction pretty heavily. So here they're talking about money on autopilot, the future of AI and personal finance. So here they're saying how a lot of people are struggling with money. Money is a complicated issue. I mean, here in the States and in a lot of other places, there's a million different things that you have to do, right? From budgeting to, if you're investing for your retirement account or your portfolio, refinancing your debt, etc. And it's confusing. Most people are not experts in it. It's not being taught in school. So people are often making just poor choices. And in fact, sometimes people are too scared to even make choices. So they don't think about it. They don't talk about it. They don't read about it. And they just hope for the best. Here it's saying that several studies have found that most people would rather talk about any other topic than their finances. Consumers don't want to spend more time thinking about their financial situation. They want someone to fix it for them, and even better, to keep them on track over time. And the apps and the software that are built for it, as they're saying here, they're like in read-only mode. So the only thing they're able to do is like read the data and maybe show you a chart of it or a graph of it, but they can't take any action on your behalf. They can't run your money for you. And so here they're saying post-generative AI, we're in the world for consumer financial platforms, LLMs, like ChatGPT or like GPT-4. They enable consumer robot process automation, which allows the finance apps to operate on the user's behalf. And so that opens up the doors for us to do a lot of things using these AIs to run stuff on your behalf. So like, for example, you can give Google Bard a screenshot of your deposits and withdrawals. You can say like the starting amount, and it can start kind of analyzing and doing stuff for you. Andreessen Horowitz believes that there's going to be a great financial super app in the US. So basically something like a one-stop financial app then sits on top of all the things that you're doing. And underneath it, you might have your bank accounts, your portfolios. You might have, if you have some mortgage or car loans, that's going to be underneath it. All your credit cards, just every financial, your Starbucks gift card, whatever, your Starbucks account, everything's going to be underneath this one app that's going to manage everything from the top down. So essentially, this thing becomes your AI accountant and wealth manager for the masses, for everybody. Not only sets you up for success, but automatically reallocates your money as your life changes. Also, a lot of banks and a lot of financial institutions like really take advantage of people. Like if you look at some of the retirement accounts where they say, oh, we just charge a 1% fee, 2% fee, that sounds like a tiny amount, 1%, that's nothing. But then when you look at how that compounds over, 30, 40 years as you're preparing for retirement, that's millions of dollars that these companies take, not because they're the most competitive or the best, just because the customer either didn't see that 1% or saw the 1% and just didn't think it was a big deal. It seemed like a small number, and that's it. So even having something that's on your side, fighting for you, giving you information that you need, that by itself is a huge deal. And so they're starting this new series we're calling Money on Autopilot, where we'll unpack how AI will transform consumer finance across all types of products. And one more example that they give is a refi robot. If you have various loans or credit cards, like switching them around can mean a lot of money, a lot of savings. There's people that do the little credit card point hacks where they like rotate their credit cards and get a bunch of free points to spend on whatever, TVs or travel or whatever. But, here they're saying if users could automatically switch loan options, that could save them thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands. However, as a borrower, figuring out refinancing options and how much they will cost you, it's not easy. You got to search around, you got to check the interest rates. You can't easily compare the stuff. So this is a problem that can be fairly easily solved with AI. It's called a refi robot, something that just goes along and, logs into your accounts, finds the cheapest refi options, and then starts executing that process. AI could go as far as filling out applications, canceling accounts, and originating new ones. And so the reason why this works is there's a lot of companies that make huge sums of money just from people not knowing what they're doing. So here it says this outcome will be enormously damaging to incumbents who profit from inefficiency. So I like this idea for a lot of different reasons. Not only is it a great idea, the financial sector is a very profitable sector to be in. AI is a brand new technology that could really disrupt the sector and will for sure disrupt the sector, but also giving broke consumers that don't know what they're doing, giving them some more power to be in charge of their financial situation. That's amazing work. That's great value. That's really doing some good. So I like everything about this. So really fast, this Andreessen Horowitz, so they have their little portfolio of investments and stuff like that from what I understand. So down here, they're talking how if you're working on a refi robot or another AI personal finance idea, we'd love to hear from you. They give their email addresses, stuff like that. Basically, if you have something like this and you want funding, you want some mentorship maybe. I don't know too much about these guys. I just know that they're kind of a well-established sort of Silicon Valley venture capitalist, whatever. So if you have an idea and you're working on it with AI, going in with somebody like that, having them fund you, having them maybe introduce you to the right people, that can be very effective. That's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this episode. My name is Wes Roth. Please subscribe. I look forward to speaking with you again. I cover AI news, and also I'm very interested in building autonomous AI agents. So I'm slowly kind of putting together my skill stack for that, and I'll be sharing all my knowledge and details on this channel. I think that AI is going to do a lot of good in this world long term. But I do believe that in the short term, we're in for a bumpy ride. I mean, what's going to happen when Amazon releases their customer service AI and all of the customer service agents around the world, around the country get fired? That's not going to happen overnight, but that's where everything's going. So staying informed right now is very important because this thing is gathering speed. We need to be ready. It's going to get rough. But I do think that on the other side of all this, there's a lot of potential for a lot of good and a better world. So that's what I believe. If you agree with me, if you're excited about this, stick with me, and I'll talk to you soon.